he was the godliest man I knew. So it was hard for me to understand why he had to take him so early. I mean, he was in his 50s. I also understood because of the way my dad raised us and taught us, and sometimes bad things happen to good people to show us God's glory and to lead more people to Christ. And so I knew that if my dad passing away meant one more person came to know Jesus, it was worth it. And my dad knew that. He absolutely knew that. And if my dad knew that more people would learn about Jesus from him dying, he'd do it all over again. So that brought me comfort in knowing that, hey, I don't know what this is going to look like right now. This isn't part of the plan. I don't know how to deal with this, but I know in 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I can look back and see how the Lord is going to work this into something beautiful.
Welcome to Raising Fatherless Kids, where we believe that
God is a father to the fatherless.
God is a father to the fatherless.
God is the father to the fatherless.
God is a father to the fatherless.
Welcome to Raising Fatherless Kids. I'm your host, Lori Apon. Ladies, one of my favorite episodes is when I have the opportunity of having a conversation with a young woman, a man who grew up with an absent dad. That's often because of death, divorce, or desertion. I call these stories, these testimonies, trophies of grace. That's a song that used to be sung that was entitled Trophies of Grace. And it's just that all the circumstances of our life and our stories don't always feel like they're going to come together in a way that would bring glory to the Lord. But He is there, even in our darkest times of suffering. And so that's why we're called a trophy of grace. And today, Adeline Galo has joined us. So Adeline, I'm so glad you're here today. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's so good to be here.
So Adeline, why don't we just start with having you share your story about when you became fatherless, and that term may have been one you never thought about until it became your reality and your story. So why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, never would have even dreamed that that would be where I am today. But I think I was about 13 years old, or just about to turn 13. And my parents sat me and my brother down on the couch and told us that my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. And I remember it so vividly. I felt like my whole world had just been like upended. I was in this like funhouse wheel of like, what's up, what's down? I don't know what is happening. Is this real? I have no idea. And so obviously I remember I just like buried my head into a pillow and like just started crying. And then, they were very upfront and honest with us, about, the treatment and the course. And they were very hopeful that it would, what the type of cancer was and how early they caught it. There wasn't a reason to be worried, at that point. And then he had surgery and then, radiation. And so over the next couple years, I think he was in remission for about a year. And we were, living life hopeful, but it's always, I'm sure anyone who has had someone with cancer, it's always in the back of your mind. I feel like you once you have it, it's always there. There's always that fear. Every scan, every test, it's like, what if it's back? So about a year after they told us that it was back, and he was going to have another surgery, another treatment. And then for the next couple years, it kept getting worse. He would go in for more surgeries. And I remember 2023, the spring, he went in for a surgery. and then never really got better. And then that fall, he went back in for another surgery to get a feeding tube put in because he could not eat. And that surgery, they came home, and I had a feeling. I was like, I don't think it's good. And my parents came home and they sat us down again, and I was 16 at that point, and they said, it's not good. It's everywhere. It's not looking good. So that was the fall. I don't remember exactly what month, but October 2023, he passed away. And I remember it was like one of those light bulb moments, that you never forget. We were sitting in hospice, and everyone there was amazing, amazing. I feel so blessed to have been able to say goodbye, and I feel like that's kind of a blessing in disguise that my family got. We knew it was coming, so we got to say everything that we wanted to, and we don't have any regrets. Like, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I, would have done more of this, because we did get to do that. But yeah, since then it's just been hard, and I'm sure it will be hard for a very long time, the rest of my life, probably.
Do you mind me asking how old you are now?
20. I just turned 20 in November.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I can only imagine what that felt like as you're entering your teenage years and your dad is sick. And for those teenage years, you were caregiving. You weren't caregiving, but you were watching the caregiving process with your mom, taking him probably in and out of appointments and surgeries, it sounds like. And a little bit of this big question mark cloud over your whole lives is he going to be healed? Is God going to answer our prayers? Or are we going to, at one point, have to release him until we meet again, right? So tell me a little bit. I'm emotional because I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. And for listeners, if you've lost your dad, and again, we have listeners who have lost their dads or experienced an absent dad for a variety of reasons. And it's not God's design. And yet he does say he's a father to the fatherless. And we're going to get into that later in the conversation. But tell me about your dad. It may bring some happy tears, but tell me, what was life like before cancer?
Yes, I love talking about him. That's like one of my favorite things. I love when people ask about him and talk about him. It makes me just so happy to talk about him. But he was the best dad. Like, he could fix anything. He was I think he gave me my like work ethic, because he was such a work hard. Like, every Saturday we'd be out doing yard work. Saturdays were our yard work days, and then for our work, he'd take us to the gas station and we'd get, ices or whatever. But he was such a man of God. Like, honestly, led our family so well. And the way he loved my mom is like, I will, in my future relationship, marriage, like, that is my standard, was their marriage, because it was a true covenant marriage. And that was like my favorite thing that he did, was set that example for me and my brother. And he did such a good job of it. And just leading our family every morning. We were homeschooled, me and my brother. So every morning we got to wake up, and he was a youth pastor, so he didn't have to go into work till like 8 or 9. So every morning we'd wake up, my mom would make breakfast, we'd sit at the table, we'd do daily devotionals, just talk, and it was just such a, he made a priority of sitting at the table for meals and engaging with each other. And when we'd come home from church, we'd talk about the sermon and what we all took from it, and just such a, I don't know, that just, it was so amazing to have that time as a family, and looking back to be homeschooled and have that much time at home and that flexibility to make memories with him and go on so many trips because of our schedule that we wouldn't have been able to do had we been, in traditional public private schools. And I'm so thankful for that time that we had, because now, there's no more four of us at the table. So, but growing up for the 16 years I had him as a dad, I wouldn't trade for anything.
What a gift. That's a great gift. And it can amplify the loss, especially when you did have an amazing dad, and set the standard, set the bar high for that future husband. And that's a good thing. It sounds like he invested well with the time that he had. And so that's beautiful. I'm glad you had that experience. So I'm curious, because it sounds like he was an intentional dad. So when he's realizing that I'm not going to probably have as many years as I would have thought. And so when he started to come to that understanding with his cancer, and you said you were able to say goodbye, what did that look like? Was he able to um, kind of mentor you or speak into your life for some things that he might not be here to be a part of?
Yes and no. I think I remember I wrote him a letter, because I was like, I'm not going to be able to sit down and talk to you and get out everything that I want. So I remember I wrote him a letter and I stuck it on his side of the bed, and he read it, and I don't think he said anything to me about it. And he didn't say anything to us, kind of like, when I'm gone, like, do this. I think, unless I'm just like forgetting, I don't really think I think he knew we'd be okay, almost. I think he knew my mom would take care of us, even though my mom was like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do.
Right.
I think he knew the Lord would take care of us. So I don't think he was too concerned with, do this, this will help you. I think he knew that the Lord had us, and he had done an amazing job raising us as far as he did. And I think he just knew that we'd be okay.
Well, it sounds like he definitely put in the most important foundation, and that was faith, and that was leading you to know the Lord and led your family well. And sometimes the best goodbyes are those that are not spoken. Maybe that was just going to be too hard, and I guess in that he would have said everything he wished he could say if he were here, because he had lived a life before you, that his life was that legacy for you. And so you're 16 and he goes to be with the Lord. How old, what grade were you in at that point?
I was in my senior year of high school.
Oh, man. That makes me cry. Wow. How did that look, and how did you walk through that senior year? A milestone year in itself.
Absolutely.
And all the things. What did that look like? How did you make it through?
Absolutely. It truly was the Lord. And I think my personality, I really don't think I processed a whole lot for a few years, at least a year and a half. I just remember being numb. And I think it was almost just out of survival, because I was like, okay, I have his birthday was a couple weeks after he passed away. And then it was my birthday. And then it was Thanksgiving. And then it was Christmas. and then it was New Year's, and it was just like, and then I had graduation and prom, and it's like all these things. So I'm just like in survival mode. And honestly, I couldn't go back and tell you like much about that time period because I think I was literally just like head down, get through it. I think it was just like get up, eat, make it through the day. But I did have amazing friends that were there for me. Not just like, sending a text. I had so many of that, but just friends that were like, I'll come sit with you. Anything like just to hang out. We had such a good community around us. But yeah, for about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, I was just numb. I think out of survival, I felt like I needed to be, probably because I'm the oldest, I felt like I needed to be the strong one for my mom and my brother. So yeah, I got through it. I don't know how. I think the Lord, most of the reason was the Lord, but.
Well, you're also describing one of the initial phases of grief, and not that there's a formula or that everyone's going to grieve the same, but there is a period of time where we go into shock, and it's almost like this adrenaline of grace that takes over, that enables us to do things that we could never do if we were really feeling the loss and the pain. So you have a senior year to make it through, and you have all these, in the first half of that is all these holidays and birthdays. And so I really do believe that's often just God's grace that allows us to walk through some really difficult times. But that's as we're entering into the valley, and then we get into the valley. So what did that look like for you when all of a sudden, when was the first where you're realizing this is my life? This is reality. My daddy is not here. Maybe that was at graduation, or what did that look like for you? And how did God meet you there?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, probably I've in the last year started processing a lot and things are hitting me more. I think just getting older too, hitting new milestones. But I remember the first time that I was like, oh, my dad's not here anymore. Was I think January. He had just passed away the previous October. It was January, and I was driving to pick up food for me and my family, and I get into a fender bender. I had rear-ended this car, and it was dark. It was rainy. It was like the worst condition, and I rear-ended this car, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm 17. I don't know what to do. So the guy, who I had rear-ended, like gets out and we pull into the parking lot. And then actually a car had hit me in the back. So it was 3 cars.
Oh no. Wow.
And we pull into the parking lot and I'm just like, I'm a mess. I'm like crying. They had called the police officer. I'm like, I go to like probably call my dad and I'm like, I don't know who to call. I'm like, who? I call my mom. I don't think she picked up because she was in the attic putting up Christmas decorations. So I was like, who do I call? So I ended up calling a friend and her dad, and they came and were super helpful and just were there for me and helped me in the situation. But yeah, I remember I was like, what do I do? This is such a dad thing. Like, I don't know what to do. So that was that poor police officer. I mean, I was a mess, but he was so nice. He was so nice. But yeah, that was the first moment. I was like, oh, this is a new reality. Like, this is something I never thought that I would be in a situation like this. But yeah, in the last year, graduating college was a huge thing because that was almost the last thing in my goals that he knew about. I was like, it's kind of like I'm leaving everything that he knew that I would do. And like I'm turning into someone he never even had like a thought that I would be, like he had ever thought about, if that makes sense. So
Adeline, it makes me cry. It makes so much sense because I've watched it and am watching it with others. It's like you outlive your dad's involvement in your life, and the grief for that is often more intense than the initial loss. And and so I get it. I'm sorry for that. It is raw, and yet I want to hear how God is helping you with that. A lot of times I've seen young people, they're gonna live to a certain point, and then when they become mothers, or then they start somehow the timing of everything, like 13, so one day, prayerfully, and I'm not projecting this on you, it's just what I've been watching, that when you become a mom and your husband is a father, and now all of a sudden you'll be able to see that 13-year-old little girl, if that's what God writes for your story. And but right now it's like you came to the end of the road of your dad, what he thought he would be a part of, and in reality what he was a part of. And now I want to hear how God has walked you through that, and what does that look like, and how has he been faithful to you in that?
yes, absolutely. He's taught me so much about myself, about him, his character. The biggest thing is he's never left me, and I know that, like growing up in the church, that's always like, God will never leave you nor forsake you. Like my head knows that. My heart, yes, in my heart I know that. I think he's definitely walked with me through some of the hardest parts of my life, some of the best parts of my life. Um, he's really, especially with getting a job, that's something that I would have, going to interviews and trying to figure out like what's the best situation for me. That's so something I would have talked to my dad about, and he would have been the best. Like he was so good with advice and so wise. I felt like he had all the answers in the world to every problem. Um, so I ended up interviewing, I think, 2 places, and I prayed. I was like, God, just make the decision for me, because I don't have anybody to talk. Like I would talk to my mom, but I was like, I don't know the best decision to make for me, and you do. You have the plan, but just you make the decision for me. That was my prayer, and I was like, I don't know. It would be nice for God to just write all of our plans and steps in the sky and us to just follow, but usually that's not what happens. Um, and I remember the first place I interviewed, they went with somebody else. So this other place worked out. They hired me on the spot, basically. And so I felt like that was such a beautiful way of God kind of being like, here, like you don't have your dad to help guide you. I'm gonna like lead you into this job that has been so amazing. It's been like such a blessing to love all of my coworkers, and they're so helpful and so understanding. With me being fresh out of school, not knowing a whole bunch, but um, it felt so like there was no other reason for this to work out than God, because he orchestrated it perfectly. Um, so I think that was a huge thing recently that he's shown me, of like, I've got you. I'm here. I'm your heavenly Father. I'll provide for you. But there have been countless times like that over the years. I can't recall in much detail, but definitely ways that he's shown up when I didn't have an earthly dad. So
and he will, and he does. And I feel confident he would be very proud of you, and just it's evident that he taught you well. And as you went into his sickness and then battling cancer, no doubt you were praying for healing. The healing didn't come in the way you wanted it to. So did that cause you to wrestle with your faith? Did it cause you seemed so grounded, but did you have moments where, why didn't you answer my prayer? Or maybe you experienced some strong emotions? Or how would you encourage other young women who maybe had a similar story, or maybe they didn't? They just don't have a dad, and they don't understand why God wouldn't have allowed them to have a dad like you had. So what does that look like for you?
Yes, I absolutely had moments of questioning. I never doubted the Lord, and I never was angry at him. Not to say I never will be, but because I knew in my heart that he had a plan and a purpose. But my flesh was like, why? But why do you have to? Why do you have to take him? He was the godliest man I knew, so it was hard for me to understand why he had to take him so early. I mean, he was in his 50s. But I also understood because of the way my dad raised us and taught us, and that sometimes bad things happen to good people to show us God's glory and to lead more people to Christ. And so I knew that if my dad passing away meant one more person came to know Jesus, it was worth it. And my dad knew that. He absolutely knew that. And if my dad knew that more people would learn about Jesus from him dying, he'd do it all over again. So that brought me comfort in knowing that, hey, I don't know what this is going to look like right now. This isn't part of the plan. I don't know how to deal with this, but I know in 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I can look back and see how the Lord is going to work this into something beautiful. But there were definitely moments of questioning why. I never questioned my faith on a super deep level, just because of that foundation that my dad had laid for our faith, and just brought us up so we would be grounded and have a good head on our shoulders and understand the word. But yes, there was definitely those times of questioning. And still are. It's hard, growing up without a dad. It's hard, especially as a girl. That I was a daddy's girl, so it's very hard for me to do some things without my dad. But just knowing that you have a heavenly father that loves and cares for you more than you could ever imagine, and sometimes that brings comfort to me. So that's what I would encourage others with.
Right. Well, we want a daddy with skin on. And yet, like you're saying, when for reasons we'll never know or really be able to understand, God is there. He does promise to be a father to the fatherless. And you've shared several examples of how he's done that when you were getting your first job out of college. Maybe even your friend's dad coming when you had that little fender bender. And so he was there, and perspective really does make a difference. And so you've kept your focus on the Lord, and he welcomes our questions. He welcomes our tears. He welcomes even anger, if that's part of the story. Someone may be listening. I mean, anger's often a part of grief. So he can handle that. He is God, and he's good. I say it often. He's kind. He's merciful. He loves us. Anything he allows in our life is somehow part of his loving plan. And I love that your dad, and then you said that if one person came to know the Lord by watching your story, and I believe often it's not about our own story.
Mhm.
It may be that God is using your story as a visual aid, as a demonstration of his faithfulness to someone else. They might be watching. You know, there's a trio in the Bible that often we see: the alien, the widow, and the fatherless. And those three, because they're um, people who are in a place of vulnerability, um, and they're always together. And I really believe, because the world is watching, they're like, well, how is Adeline going to make it through her senior year with her dad fighting cancer? How is Adeline going to make it through prom? How is she going to handle her high school graduation and going into college? And no doubt, probably more than you will ever know, you have seen God glorify himself in your life, Adeline, and it's just so beautiful. So thank you for keeping your eyes on Jesus. And for those of you listening, moms and daughters, Adeline's going to be at Daughters of the King this year. If you're in the Atlanta area, it's on March 7th. And I'm really excited to have her share more of her story and just be there to encourage other young girls who maybe are experiencing the same kind of loss or just experiencing an absent dad. I'm also excited. We have our book, Absent Dad, Present Father, coming out soon. And her story is in that book, which is what drew me to having her on the podcast today, because I can just sense a peace in your story, in your life, Adeline. I can see that you're trusting God, even though you don't understand everything that he's doing. And um, so we'll have that book out soon, and you'll definitely have a way to get Absent Dad, Present Father. But as we close, Adeline, is there anything that you would like to say, maybe to a mom who is raising a young girl without a dad, or something that you've learned, or just a word of encouragement for any young girl?
Yes, absolutely. I would say my number one thing is don't stop talking about them. Don't stop sharing about them with your kids, or don't stop telling your mom your favorite thing about them. Or even though it's hard and sometimes you are crying because you saw something that reminded you of them, like talk about it. My favorite thing to do with my family is sit around and talk about memories and our favorite things about my dad. And I think it almost helps him feel alive just for a few seconds. And I think it's helpful to process a lot of grief. And and for people who maybe haven't lost somebody, but know some people that have lost and don't know what to say or what not to say, or how do you interact with them, just talking about them too and saying, hey, I saw this that reminded me of them, or I was thinking about them the other day. That means the world to us, to know that there's still people who think about them and who talk about them. It makes all the difference. So that's a huge thing that I would leave you with, is that.
Yes, it's a gift, isn't it? The memories that we have, the memories that we treasure. And then when we get an extra surprise where someone might share a story you didn't even know about your dad. So those of you who haven't experienced the loss of a dad, or you're not a single mom, you're not a widow, um, just understand that we tend to pull back. Well, I'm not going to mention her dad, or I'm not going to say anything that would hurt too bad. But it's the other way around. It is a gift. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to have you at Daughters of the King. I can't wait to have your story out. Here's the book. I'll hold it up. I don't know if it's backwards, it might be backwards on the screen, but Absent Dad, Present Father. We will put a link for that in our show notes when it's available. And just be encouraged, moms, if you have a daughter who has experienced the loss of her dad, Adeline is a woman of God, a young lady who has remained steadfast in her faith, and she is of great encouragement. She is a trophy of grace. And for any young girl who has lost their dad, I want to encourage you that in the absence of an earthly dad, God is present. He will be faithful. So have a good day, and thanks again, Adeline, for being here.
Of course, I enjoyed it.